What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Average American Podcast. This is your host, Nathan Tate. I'm going to be honest with you. Lightning is shit in here. I look like shit. um, but fuck it. We're going to do it because I'm motivated to do this. And that's hard to come by these days, considering, work and everything else. But enough about my bullshit. Let's get on to the world's bullshit, namely the U.S. bullshit. And I really want to start with talking about something that feels like personal to me because I'm at the age I'm starting to look for a house. Me and my wife have been talking about it. And, you know, if we didn't live in a place that was like shittily affordable, it'd probably be impossible with what we make. It's not even like we do bad. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. We start to feel that cost of living stuff. We still have fun. We still do all those things, and we both have decent careers. But it's like I just think back to the fact that the economy at one point was could survive, subsist on a single income, two cars, decent starter home, family of four, maybe five, six, sometimes more. Um, just dad worked, and so I just wonder what that would have been like. I guess how much I don't know if I want to say easier, but how much more sustainable maybe that was. But who knows? Can't look back now. I will say I really, to kind of stay on the topic, because I wonder how long do we deal with this. I was listening to Rogan episode with Constantine Kassin and Francis Foster, and they run trigonometry, either one. I think it's trigonometry. Anyway, they're UK based podcasters who do political debates for the most part, or like social issues, stuff like that. They've had a ton of different people come onto their platform, ranging from people I admire and respect, like Chris Williamson, to individuals I think are absolutely fucking retarded, like Hassan Piker. So, you know, do with that information what you will. They have, I think, some good ideas, and they have some interesting information. I do tend to disagree with Constantine Kassin on several things, mostly because I am a Scott Horton, Dave Smith libertarian type of individual, and you know that to me is conflicting with sort of their right wing kind of views that they have, and uh, so I tend to, while still listening to them and thinking they have intelligent points of view to make, I often do disagree with some of the points of view that they have. Uh, but regardless, I was listening to it, and they were talking about how in the wealthier parts of the UK right now, they're starting to deal with an inability to provide the reasonable essentials in life. And I say that because they're talking about households cutting back meat consumption, which sounds all too familiar, I think, to most people, um, in terms of what they're dealing with. And of course, with, feeling that kind of penny pinching squeeze. So the fact that people are having to choose to not buy meat because it's so expensive, that's a little foreboding, it feels, or could even be considered foreshadowing. I hope it's not foreshadowing. If I need to explain foreshadowing to you, I think maybe this isn't the podcast for you. I'm just kidding, but seriously, you should look up the definition of foreshadowing if you don't know what it is. Um, Literary term. But regardless, you see and hear about things like that going on around the world, and then you see the oil price hikes, with the whole war of Iran kickoff, and I mean, it's been what, 2 weeks? I think almost 2 weeks for the war of Iran since it began, and um, there's not really an end in sight. There's no real end goal, and it's caused gas prices to shoot up. And funnily enough, and I do find this to be very funny, is that they released restrictions on Russian energy to kind of alleviate some of that. Because with the squeeze that Iran's putting on the Strait of Hormuz, oil is not flowing at like a reasonable rate. It shot up to $100 a barrel. A lot of people saw it reach, a dollar over. Some places where I live, it's almost up to $4 a gallon, which doesn't seem like a lot if you're somewhere who lives in like a liberal shit state like Colorado or California or maybe Washington. I don't know, places where things are way more expensive because fucking socialistic government ideas have created a war on capitalism, which keeps prices low. But we won't get into the socioeconomics of our individual regions of the country, because that's not what we want to talk about today. Um, so yeah, I just think you know that we're going to probably see even more of a squeeze on the wallets. So if you got something cool, something fun you want to do, I'd probably go do it, because I don't know for a fact if something is going to come, but it's hard to think. There's I can't say there's no off ramp or no way to get out of the Iran war unscathed. Obviously, it's impossible to become unscathed, but I guess with our head held high, if you want to put it in those terms, um, because it's already been an absolute fucking disaster. Minus or contrary to what mainstream media or any type of right wing pundit will have you believe. If you just open X, you'll find a bunch of old people and a bunch of retards fucking praising Trump for his handling of the situation and how well we're doing, which is just a bold faced fucking lie. Which transitions into the more important part of what I want to talk about in this episode is, you know, how many times do we do regime change in the Middle East for Israel before we really kick the bucket? You know, I hate to be a pessimistic individual, and I would pray for nothing but myself to be wrong in this instance. And I really, really, really hope that myself and the other individuals that I've been listening to, Scott Horton, the Rogan podcast when he talks to other individuals about stuff like this, Dave Smith, Daryl Cooper, any of those guys that really pay attention to this political things. Tim Dillon is while satire still actually provides a good perspective and good information, I think. And so I really, I just find it difficult to be optimistic about where this goes, because I really only see three possible outcomes, and only one of them is somewhat reasonably good for us. And that can only be based on the bravado of Trump's ego. And so that one is Trump goes, we killed the Ayatollah. We took out most of the regime, the high level regime individuals. They didn't damage the IRGC that much, but it's the responsibility of the people that we are to liberate, for them to go and do the thing. They got to do the full regime change, which, if you've been paying attention at all, probably wouldn't happen anyway, because there were hundreds of thousands of individuals in the street chanting death to America and supporting the regime and the new Ayatollah. Seems like a problem. I don't know, maybe. Um, because if you look at it, it's 92 million people in that country, right? So combine Texas and California, and you got Iran, both probably in landmass and in terms of, people that live there. If you even have, I don't know, 5% of that population creates an insurgency against whatever regime that you plan to install, you've got a hell of a fucking problem that you got to deal with now, because you took out the regime, but there's no infrastructure. So, government has to be rebuilt. And then now you have, similar to how we had the Kurds in Iraq, or you had types of jihadis or the Bin Ladenites that opposed all the Houthis are another, from what I understand, Iranian division of individuals. The uh, Hezbollah is I might be pronouncing that wrong. I think it's pronounced differently, but they're another terrorist organization that I've heard plenty of about, but don't really know that much about, if I'm being quite frank. But so you have all of this potential issues that could be presented, even if we successfully do the regime change, right? So let's say that Trump does bow out, say, we got the Ayatollah, we got a lot of the upper guys. It's on the uh, civilians of Iraq that wish to change the regime to go ahead and make that difference. That's the only way we step out and say we could come and get your leader anytime we want. Now, let's be realistic. That's still a blow to us. And you're going to say, how's that a blow to us? We killed their head guy. We killed a bunch of high level officials, wiped out most of his family. Um, we showed and proved our might, in the Middle East again, I might add. And I would counter with, yeah, but did Iran cower? Did they, maybe at first, but now they're returning fire. And then you go with the idea that Netanyahu might be dead. I mean, that's been a floating conspiracy for a few days now, that Netanyahu could have been killed. And then they're putting out AI videos of Netanyahu, which I'll try to include a clip in here if I can figure it the fuck out, because I'm not the most technical guy. But even if I can't for some reason get one in here, um, then I will try to put a link or something to where you can get and see these, maybe on X. But there's one where he has like 6 or 7 fingers. Um, there's one where there's like a coffee he's holding, but the coffee had liquid, and then when he sets it down, the liquid disappears. So, they're putting out these AI videos. It really brings up the question, like, is this guy fucking alive or not? And I'm inclined to think that maybe he's alive, but he's hiding, sort of indicative of maybe Epstein style, like what people have suggested in their conspiracies. Epstein's still alive, but he's hiding out. Netanyahu could very well be doing something similar to avoid Iranian strikes. He could also be dead, and they don't want to tell us because that would mean that Iran actually was effective in their counterstrikes, in their return fire. And then all of this is um, irrelevant to the fact that we don't have the munitions for this fight. Um, I'm under the impression that they thought it was going to be much quicker, you know, and we're just kind of winging it, which brings us to the next scenario that I see. And this one, it, I don't want to say it's the worst outcome, but it's the worst for America, the US as an empire, is that we can't do shit in Iran. We run out of munitions, and our allies refuse to help. We've already seen that France is not going to send warships. Italy has pulled out. Okay, so you got two right there. Now, I'm not saying they're huge major players, but those are two well-known European countries that in the past have almost always allied with us after World War II. Um, in World War II, Italy was not on our side. But either way, um, you've got two countries right there that are already like, this isn't for us. This isn't worth it. We don't want this, the economic strain. We don't have to deal with the ramifications of nation building potentially, which we're not supposed to be doing, but, whatever. Um, so they've backed out, right? And let's say all we've got left is like UK, Germany, um, several other European smaller countries, any of the stands, if you will. Um, some of the other NATO countries. I don't remember all of the NATO countries if I'm being 100% with you, but the reality is we don't have enough firepower to keep ourselves moving, and we've already removed shit from the Gulf Coast countries, and our Asian allies as well, and moved them over to protect Israel. So now, what we had in South Korea that was protecting against North Korea, we took that shit and we moved it to Israel to protect the Israelis because they're in close range missile fire of Iran. But we've left South Korea somewhat defenseless, mostly defenseless, I would imagine. Not to mention that Iran was able to take out two different THAAD batteries. And if you don't know what a THAAD battery is, it's just a really complicated tracking system, from my understanding. I could be completely off on that. That is just simply what I've heard other people talk about it. I have not looked into what it is myself. So if you're really interested, I recommend you go do the research on what a THAAD battery is. What I do know, however, is that each THAAD battery is a billion fucking dollars. Okay. And it's not like you could just pop them up. Okay, this is $1 billion. Takes a while to fucking make, and from what I've heard, our defense contractors' infrastructure system is defunct, if you will. It's ass, in more layman's terms. Broken. We can't really produce at the level at which we'd like to produce, which is why we're having munitions issues. Um, and so you're just looking at all this, right? And all this snowballs, and we don't get the support and all that stuff. So the second outcome would be we have to pull out of Iran in the same way that we pulled out of Afghanistan. Granted, hopefully no boots on the ground. They've talked about it and they've said they're open to it. And I've heard things about the draft and all this. We don't know yet, but Trump's a pretty unfucking predictable guy. So I'm not going to rule out anything. And not to mention, he's just fucking dumb. I mean, with all due respect to whatever he's accomplished in his life, he's an idiot. When it comes to political decisions and foreign policy, he's an absolute fucking moron. He doesn't understand the geopolitical gravity of the decisions that he's making. Everyone asked him not to do this. Russia didn't want him to do it. China didn't want him to do it. And I just want to, put a caveat in here about the Russia and China stuff. Russia makes enough energy that they don't need anything from Iran. Okay, they don't. That's just a fact. Russia doesn't need anything from Iran. Would it make things a little tighter? It's like when your spouse whose job you didn't need but was helping, you just cut back on a couple expenses. It's pretty much the same thing for China too. China only gets 14% from Iran. So if we're trying to say, oh, we're taking it, this is also Russia China implications. It's like China only has 14%. You know what China did to combat this? They stopped exporting oil. They shut it all down. That's it. That's all they had to do. Now, who knows how long they can keep that up, but I'd imagine they're prepared for it to be long term if they're just immediately going to shut down production because they're putting reserves. Not to mention that oil reserves for most of our allied countries are almost non existent, third to a half on oil reserves. So do with that information what you will. They were not really prepared for this situation, and this whole Strait of Hormuz thing is really a fucking issue because, and no matter what Trump says about, oh, we've decimated their military, uh, you know, we've destroyed their submarines, this, that, or the other. No one was talking about Iran's naval power. Of course we have the naval power over them, but why are people still not willing to go through the Strait of Hormuz? Because it's still close enough and bordering Iran that they could just take you out from the shore. At least that's what I'm imagining. I'm gonna be honest. I'm I'm working off of information I've given and not things that I've researched. So I want to be clear that if you have a combating idea or something to correct me, that's perfectly fine, and I'm willing to listen. However, that's what it seems like it would be. Otherwise, why wouldn't we just do free trade or free travel rather through the Strait of Hormuz? Why would it be an issue? So you have that. So the scenario two would be us tucking tail, leaving Iran alone, admitting that we couldn't do the regime change. We wasted a bunch of fucking money, wasted a bunch of fucking resources. People have already died and been injured. Not to mention, you know, that as another little caveat here, that we kicked off this war by sneak attacking Iran in the middle of negotiations for the second time. And we killed approximately 175 young women and small little girls. Hit a girls' school in Iran, killed a bunch of children. And we can say, like, oh, you know, we don't know if it was us. We're doing an investigation. Not many nations have Tomahawk missiles, from my understanding. Us, the UK, and Australia are the only ones I've heard of that have Tomahawks. Outside of maybe your major players like Russia and China, who aren't directly firing anything. Iran, I don't believe, has any Tomahawk missiles, from what I've heard. I could be correct. I could be incorrect on that. Um, but either way, it's it just so happens that a Tomahawk missile came flying and did that, and it was Iran and not us, or another country that Iran sold it to, or a country that one of the countries we associate with sold it to. I don't know. That all sounds like a big old bullshit and fucking excuse to me. But even if you, okay, take that at face value and say Iran did launch that and did it out, if we didn't start a fucking war, you could argue that maybe missiles wouldn't hit schools full of children. That's probably, that's almost a guarantee, I would say. Unless it's a terrorist attack, I guess. And then that would be something Iran would have to deal with. But why would they have Islamic terrorist attacks when they're an Islamic state? That doesn't really make sense, does it? So, anyway, and to wrap all that up, scenario 2, we bow out. We look like pussies. We look like little bitches because we couldn't take down a country in the Middle East that we claimed didn't have shit, was completely decimated, no nuclear program. But between us and Israel, we couldn't do a fucking thing. And I argue that that's a worse fucking thing for us because that incredibly diminishes the U.S.'s bullying power that we've asserted for quite some time, since after World War II, even maybe a little bit before then, but really after World War II when we really started bullying a lot of places. And so the worst outcome, but less worse for us that I see is, I can't believe the words coming out of my mouth, World War III with no nukes. Okay, let's be very super fucking clear on that. If it's nuclear weapons, it's by far the worst. I'd rather us leave Iran with tail tucked than global nuclear war. However, if people are able to refrain from the trigger, and it goes into World War III, then we could pull other people in, and that could potentially result worse if we lose. I don't think in that scenario we would lose, but realistically, that's not just us getting put down. That's a lot of different places getting put down. It would change the dynamic for sure. But I think that it would be ultimately better because we could say we did everything we could and it was really our allies who couldn't step up and help us. Rather than, oh, we did everything we could without any help and it wasn't enough to just take out this singular Middle Eastern country when we're supposed to be the strongest, best military that's ever existed. So, those are the three scenarios I see it playing out as. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that there's some other off ramp, some easy opportunity that Trump gets presented in the next 5 to 7 days that gives him a easy way to get out of this. And I want to be clear. I don't give a flying fuck about that guy's dignity, nor do I give a shit about his presidency. What I do care about, however, is the impact that it has on American economics and the impact it has on America's socioeconomic status. They're already working on BRICS. They've been working on BRICS for a while. And as the dollar still diminishes, BRICS will forever. It's gonna be a slow build because we have the petrodollar. And that's just when we established that on top of fiat currency, we made ourselves very difficult to dethrone. But if you get enough countries together and they agree to use a different currency, maybe they construct their own, maybe they choose one of a country that is already included in BRICS, you know, that is disastrous for us. Where do we go from there when the dollar is no longer the strong point? Because that's really the only thing that keeps us afloat is the fact that the petrodollar, is what is tied to the U.S. That everybody pays for oil in dollars. That's our most valuable resource. Most everything is made out of oil, or petroleum. Even our medicine is petroleum based. Thanks, Rockefeller, you fucking piece of shit. But regardless, like I said, I hope that for some reason there's an easy off ramp that's presented, and Trump does take it. There's been chatter that I've heard that he didn't want to do this war, but I think he just felt obligated because of the Adelson's donations, APAC, and I think they got shit on him. I think they got shit on him. I think they got shit on a lot of people in his cabinet. I think they got tons of shit on all of the senators and stuff, which is why they won't ask for a vote. They won't ask for a vote on shit like that because they know that there's some stuff in the closet. There's some shit in the closet. And so I don't know. I hope that we can get out of this with relatively intact. I don't see it happening. I'd hate to be that guy. I think you should start diversifying your portfolio and preparing for a possible stock market bubble burst. Um, that just from the people that are much smarter than me. And if you'd like to go listen to, Tucker's interviews with bankers, um, other individuals I've heard who aren't even in the banking world that are saying, "Hey, this is concerning." Um, you know, I hate to be gloom and doom. It's not. Let's try to put a positive spin on it. If this works out, if they failed 6 times, but they get the seventh, right? All the regime change they've done or attempted to do has failed miraculously and spectacularly, but they get the Iran shit, right? Let's just say they're due one and they get it, okay? And it looks good, and we install liberal democracy over there, and it goes back to the Iran of the 70s before the Ayatollah took over in the 80s. That still doesn't excuse the fact that we've demonstrated in the last 3 to 6 months, because I feel like there was a veil that we kind of just tore apart, where it was like, we were doing stuff behind the scenes, and the deep state would always fucking do something, but we as America were like, we don't just do war to do war. We always create a false fake premise. Wars are sold on lies. Oldest trick in a book. Propaganda is propaganda for a reason. And you're being propagandized right now. Not necessarily by me, but every other thing that you see. Trust me, I see it all the time. I mean, the fucking senator for my district, what was his name? Something Good? Brad Good? Mike Good? I can't remember. Um, but they're like, he's against Trump. He wants Chinese to take over the farmland. And I'm just like, I don't. Why the fuck would I believe a dumbass ad I saw on YouTube about this shit? Why are you trying to give this to me? I'm not the demographic that's gonna fucking fall for it, and the demographic that's gonna fall for it isn't on YouTube. Most of them, anyway. You need to be putting that shit on Fox News. Those are the only dumb motherfuckers that are gonna believe that shit. So that's where we sit. I think with the Iran stuff for now. Um, I'm just really tired of the whole selling everything on a false liberation idealism. The Venezuela stuff, you know, I heard Francis Foster, who's from Venezuela, talking about some things getting better and he'd heard it got better, but we're not hearing anything because we don't really give a fuck. Let's be honest. Other than our government going in and doing an operation and taking out the leader and his wife, um, you know, doesn't seem like we give a fuck. I haven't heard shit about Venezuela since. Other than a few times it comes up maybe as a reference point. Other than referring to what we did in Venezuela, does anybody give a shit about fucking Venezuela? And maybe that's because the situation's under control. I don't know. But it's always very interesting to me that I just, you stop hearing about it. Like we did a thing and it was cool and it was badass and it was fucking rah rah America, and now you just nothing. Don't hear no more about it. So very interesting. Um, like I said, I hope we can get out of this, but I don't know where it goes from here. Feels a little bit like Iraq War 2, which I was mostly young for. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not trying to fucking experience war in the Middle East that lasts for 20 fucking years and destroys the currency that I have to use to fund my life. Wouldn't be my fucking preference, I gotta be honest. Um, but either way, that's where we're at, I think, on the Iran stuff. I'd like to dive a little bit into um, Epstein, and I just feel like we got to keep talking about it. Um, so many people. I just listened to that episode last week with Schellenberger. I don't remember his first name. I don't know much about the guy. I guess he's a journalist that Joe knows pretty well, probably from when he lived in L.A. And I listened to their interview, and I think his name's Michael Schellenberger, but I'm calling everybody Michael, so I could just not know any of their actual fucking names except for their last names. But either way, you know, he tried to deny a lot of the Epstein stuff um, about, especially, it was really interesting because, and I don't know if you know this or not, uh, but 18 days before Epstein died, he was found in a cell unconscious with a noose around his neck, I think tied from a jumpsuit. And his partner, or not his partner, but his cellmate was Tony DeFiglio or something like that. I can't remember his fucking name. I heard it several times. But either way, he was a convicted killer, or was a contract killer that was on standing on trial for the murder of 4 drug dealers and a drug deal gone bad. He's a retired cop. And anyway, big, huge, hulking man who allegedly tried to kill Epstein. Epstein had reported to the guards that his cellmate had tried to kill him 18 days prior to his actual death, his suicide. If you're listening to this, I did air quotes because I don't think he killed himself, and I don't fucking think anybody else believes that shit either, except for stupid motherfuckers like this guy Schellenberger, who's like, we just don't know. And it's like, I'm tired of the charitable shit. I'm tired of everybody being charitable about fucking this, that, or the other. Dude, the fuck are we talking about? There's so much evidence in these emails, and that's not even all of them. But they're talking about pizza, grape soda, beef jerky. You know, Epstein was into all kinds of weird shit. And I could go into, some of the specifics of it, genetics and, um, the specific email between him and his doctor about, hey, take your erectile dysfunction medication and then we're going to go get pizza and grape soda. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Was I born at night? Yeah, but it wasn't last night. Like, fuck, come on, bro. Don't piss on me and tell me it's raining. I'm old enough and reasonably intelligent enough to know that that's like code. And everybody else knows it's code. But because we live in this society where like we don't actually have any authority, we just have this like kind of social outrage we can express. There's nothing that we can actually do about it. There's no difference that we can really fucking make. I mean, this is an oligarchy. At this point, is an oligarchy. We no longer live in a constitutional republic because if we did, then we wouldn't be in a war with Iran. Nobody wanted this fucking war. He got like what, 20%, 25% or something, and then people are lying to him in the White House, telling him that it was 90% approval, so he just fucking went ahead with it. Like nobody wanted this shit. Nobody that I've heard or talked to, or anyone who knows or understands. This was a fucking war for Israel. This was another regime change war for Israel to fund their or try to establish their greater Israel project that they believe in. And so I just, it's a war of choice. It's a regime change war, which has gone so fucking well for us. Um, Not to mention on the fact that, we haven't won a war since World War II. Not really. I guess you call it, Operation Desert Storm, but all we did was go in and fuck the Kuwaitis up real quick. And that was Saddam Hussein. And we just went in there, bap, 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 game over. That was the easy win. And then what happened after that? Iraq War II, like almost a decade later. Um, and so I don't know. It's clear that our opinions don't matter, our votes don't matter. Um, and there's people that have been saying that for years. My dad was one of them. There's other people I know who have said that, and when you're young or younger, you're optimistic. You're like, no, no, we can make things better. We can make things right. I struggle every day with the idea that we could improve this shit because not enough of us fucking care. I mean, that's really the reality. If enough people fucking cared, we might have been able to stop this war or stop the Iraq war, which honestly, the terrorist attack, you say that, but it seems like a false flag to me, personally. However, no matter how you look at it, we were probably always going to do Iraq War 2 after 9/11 because of the reasonings we were given. Now, if we had the internet at the capacity we have it now, there probably would have been some exposed things, and we probably would have maybe been able to. I don't even know if we could have stopped it, but we may have been able to shed more light on it. And with that light shedding, it would have been easier to stop or prevent this one. Unfortunately, this is the one's happening in real time that we have more information about, and there's like more eyeballs on it, more journalism, and all that kind of stuff. So we have so much more information relative to it. And I don't see where we have any influence as the public. And so people who don't vote, I get it. I'll probably still vote just because I believe this is a personal belief that voting gives me the right to bitch about it. If I voted, I could complain. If you didn't vote, I feel like your complaints are a little less valid. And I don't mean that like in a disrespectful way. It's just you didn't even participate in the system. So how can you complain about a system you didn't participate in? It's kind of fucking stupid. Doesn't make any sense now, does it? That's like complaining about um, rules for truck drivers and you work in an office. You're not even fucking doing the thing. You could objectively observe something that's stupid and go, well, that was fucking stupid. But I just feel like you have, you know, less base to stand on. I got 2 feet, you got one. That's how I look at it. So that's probably wrong, but hey, whatever. I'm a person, I'm a human. Um, But with the Epstein stuff, I think it's important we just keep talking about it. Seems like he was Mossad. Seems like someone was trying to kill him, clearly, or they faked his death because there's reports of an ambulance coming in that was unscheduled, took out a body. So who knows? Epstein could be alive somewhere, you know? And I know that's a conspiracy theory. That's fringe shit. Seems kind of crazy. But what? I mean, everything's fucking crazy, man. We can't even tell what's real anymore with the AI videos and shit. Like, they're getting really fucking good. And if you think in another year it's not going to get, exponentially better, 2 to 3 times better than it is now, where you can't fucking tell the difference half the time. And if you think you're like one of those people, you're like, nah, couldn't be me. Like, bitch, shut up. It could be you, and it will be you. It'll get all of us. And then it'll be some scary times. But March Madness is fucking here, boys. March Madness is here. And the UFC is going to have a fight at the White House in June. So, until everything goes to absolute shit, we got some stuff to look forward to. Let's fucking get it, baby. I don't know about you, but I feel way fucking better. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you probably don't feel better about any of that shit that I fucking said, which is super funny to me. Um, but either way, appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for listening to me rant. I needed to get that out. It's been 11 days of nothing but just, the horrendous stuff. Oh, real quick before I go, I wanted to point out that if you think that the government's not against you, and you think that the government is there for your benefit and your protection, just look at what they're doing to Tucker Carlson. Dude has done nothing but, you know, voice his opinion and still heaped praise on Trump. He has done nothing to defame or attack Trump. Always advocated for liking Trump, but he has been incredibly vocal against Israel. And as a Christian man, being incredibly vocal against Israel seems like the ultimate sin, apparently. So now they have a leveled case against him. He doesn't believe we'll go anywhere. I don't know the details of it, but if you're really interested, I'd look into it. I'm sure I'll find out more tomorrow when I listen to his podcast episode relative to it. I saw a clip. That's how I know about it. But the real big point I think that we need to all realize is that it's very much a rules for thee, not rules for me type of situation we're in. You go back and look at they didn't vote to release their sexual misconduct records, and there's a sexual misconduct slush fund that's funded by us, the taxpayers. These people are committing sexual crimes, sexual misconduct against civilians, individuals, or other congresspeople. Who fucking knows? And there's a slush fund funded by us to pay out for their fucking debauchery. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you. If I committed it, and I would be appalled with myself if I ever had, but if I did, there would be no slush fund for me to pay off the victim. I'll tell you that. I'd be going straight to jail. Fucking babagadoosh. The gabagoo. Oh, no, I'm just vamping now. Anyway, appreciate you guys fucking stopping by. You know, always appreciate anybody who takes the time to listen. Leave a comment, a like, thoughts, opinions, and thanks for tuning in. Average American coming at you live. Podcast for the average American by the average American. See ya.
תודה. מה שאלת אותי?
ראש הממשלה אומרים ברשת שאתה בכלל מת?
אני מת על קפה, אתה יודע מה? אני מת על העם שלי. איך הם מתנהגים, פנטסטי. אתה רוצה לספור את מספר אצבעות?
אתה יכול להראות לנו?
פה. פה. ראית?
יפה מאוד.
לחיים.
ראש הממשלה מסר לאנשים שיוצאים ומתאווררים?
לצאת להתאוורר, אבל ליד מרחב מוגן. והעמידה שלכם היא מדהימה, נותנת כוח לי, לממשלה, לצה"ל, למוסד. אנחנו עושים דברים שאני לא יכול לשתף ברגע זה, אבל עושים דברים מכים באיראן חזק מאוד, גם ביום הזה, גם בלבנון, ממשיכים. אתם אומרים לי להמשיך? אני אומר לכולכם, גם אתם תמשיכו. תמשיכו להישמע להוראות פיקוד העורף, כל הזמן, להישמע להוראות פיקוד העורף, וגם לראשי הערים, להיות תמיד ליד מרחב מוגן. ואנחנו נקל ככל שהדבר ניתן. ותודה לך על הקפה, הוא מצוין. אני לא יודע לגבי הקלוריות, זה נראה לי מסוכן מאוד.